Okay, I don't have an intro. Dragon's Dogma is sick, bro! Dragon's Dogma is a game where you can make your wife. Gonna be real awkward when I need to kill off my party for higher assassin damage. Dragon's Dogma is the devil may cry of fantasy, the reason I haven't played Monster Hunter, an action RPG with so much potential it hurts. Because it's kinda bad. Regardless, the game's a cult classic, so let's enter the idyllic land of Gransys. Did somebody call for an inciting incident? Oh, god damn it! Oh, come on, dude, really? Dragon's Dogma wastes no time throwing you into the fight, and that's important because instead of outright killing you, Buddy here's gonna tear your heart out because he's your ex or something, and now you're fated to hunt him down. The game gives you a good chunk of customization out of the gate, you know, pick your appearance. I tried. Pick your class. Soon enough, that'll expand to 9 different class options, and if that ain't my favorite part of games. Well, okay, there's this one other thing. Bye-bye, dickhead! Before you truly set out, an ashy hobbit appears and tells you there's an entire race of subhumans that exist to be subservient to the Chosen One. Oh, they're even called pawns. I too like riding in a race born into slavery instead of making functioning co-op. You get to make a main pawn, a permanent party member, but more on that later. If I ever get canceled, I swear, they're gonna highlight the wife thing earlier and mention this pawn system and be like, curious, symbolic abuse, wouldn't you say? Anyway, this guy self-inserts into your adventure and, you know, go off. The quest might start hot, but quickly turns room temperature and continues to cool. Great for the narrative of progression, you know, slowness, and if you stick with it, you'll see yourself wildly more powerful than when you started. But take the first monster you fight.
Alright, Polyphemus, let's tango. Oh, what the f-
You're very frail, and not dodging key attacks means you end up dead. Even worse, the world map is teeming with enemies. They're exploding out of the bushes, these stupid chittering fools. Goblins, bandits, the entire species Canis lupus. Everything and everyone is doing their absolute best to shred you like a spaghetti squash. Meanwhile, every pawn is screaming the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Ignore the comely face! Those talons bite deep!
Joke's on you, game. I've already circumcised that fated smeg. Meanwhile, veering from the beaten path is a lot like Assassin's Creed Origins. Because a lot of enemies are over-leveled, and you die a lot if you don't know what level you need to be to engage. Dragon's Dogma, god that name. It's like the funny word comedian thing, like breakfast beverage. Yeah, I got peanut butter in my Dragon's Dogma. Dragon's Dogma is a game that dangles the GameStop receipt in your face and scream laughs at you until you break the thing in or uninstall. But the focus is on combat, and it's strong in a lot of ways, maybe enough to carry a good chunk of players to the end. It's just that the entire rest of the game gets in the way. Okay, we'll go gripe to good. Gameplay a go-go, baby! The world map is small, you know, it looks like a lot, but a top-to-bottom run might only take 10 minutes. Almost nothing but monsters and terrain dot the landscape. Citizens and traveling pawns don't count. They don't do anything. It's a world map that's pretty enough to look at, but with almost nothing going on. Maybe the occasional side quest or triggered encounter, sure, but those are all pretty far away from civilization anyway. And you go out so often, and for so long, and down the same paths that the big monsters, which should be a joy to fight, turn into a chore by the end. We're looking at something like 4 big monster varieties that regularly appear, and an avalanche of everything else. It's so frustrating because variety and random occurrences might have spiced the actual meat of the gameplay up enough to be palatable to a more general audience. As it stands, 5 out of 30 minutes is actually interesting. And fast travel's present, except it's done via stones you have to place yourself. And if you don't know, you're gonna have to go back to, say, the exact location you just finished with between main quest turn-ins. You're probably just gonna hurl yourself off something tall when it happens. 7 minutes, 10 minutes sounds light, right? But stamina gates your travel time. Yeah, your character can break into the sickest sprint I've seen in video games, but the bar isn't very big and very few classes can meaningfully increase stamina. So half the time you're sprinting and half the time you're waiting for your pawn to come cheer you up. And it's a shame because it's supposed to balance combat, ensure you're not spamming high power skills back to back. Like this.
Town's not big enough for the two of us. Fuck. I hate getting tired in combat. Oh my god. Just gonna stand there, bro? Ooh, get capped!
What happens most often for melee characters is running out of stamina from just climbing a little on a Cyclops or Chimera. These enemies have shakes and other moves that force you to jump, draining your stamina, or just simply drain it. So the natural flow of combat is often ruined by the stamina bar, which kinda sucks for an action game. But what's really crazy is the item system. You know, I have no problem with mining and collecting materials to temper my equipment, that's all fine, but it's crazy to let the player spam stamina and health restoring items mid-combat. Check this out, look at me, I'm an idiot, I charge at mages in precarious places. Oh, better pause the game to save me from dying for free. Like, sometimes you can do the same thing when you're being grappled to death. It's nuts. Just stock up any chance you get. You're basically invincible. Like most fantasy games, there's status effects. Oh, I like this one. In a game with a genuinely horrifying nighttime, when the world goes pitch black and monsters seemingly double, it's a bit weird that when your oil lantern runs out, you simply put it away, watch an animation, open a menu, re-equip it, and the light's back. Same goes for getting your lantern wet. Maybe it seems innocuous, but it's both a non- and simultaneous punishment. The animations are annoying and cumbersome, and why can't you just inject fuel into it? Have an option to dry the lantern. God, it's death by 1,000 cuts. There's all these side quests, and while a lot of them are easy, kill 10 harpies, well, I was doing it anyway. Most of the others either blur as the game progresses or are just too cryptic or non-directional to make any kind of sense. Many side quests are resolved by finding the person you need to talk to entirely on accident and receiving a reward. Thank you, Secret Santa? Lastly, the setting is decent. It's got some incredible views and construction. I really love the starting area you spend like 5 minutes in, but the game is extremely serious about its palette. You're getting green, you're getting brown, you're getting gray, blue for sky and water, and not a damn thing more. It paints a picturesque dark fantasy, but the landscape is unforgivingly plain after the 10th outing. Stock Dungeons and Dragons monsters, mythological creatures, probably nothing you haven't seen before. This sickness, this pallor infects even the characters, city folk, vendors, people you see all throughout the game and who universally lack emotion, dimensions, anything. The entire world might as well be cardboard. They're what people who hate fantasy see in fantasy. And it's so weird because almost nothing memorable about the game is mundane. The plot is full of death cult psychos. The special moves are ripped straight out of anime. The magic is wild. They injected the game with so much character, but tactically. This is it. This is what I threw my wife off a cliff for. Dragon's Dogma may be repressed by its palette and setting, but breathes in its combat. So much life, so much expression. The game becomes almost unrecognizable when a battle begins because Capcom knows mechanics. It's the little things like being able to interact with objects, specifically by picking them up and throwing them, and using explosive barrels to your advantage in the middle of combat. Being able to climb monsters to really lay into specific weak points adds a powerful build-up and payoff to the narrative spun by bloodshed. The big monsters, at least until the endgame, are usually cinematic or epic in scope, taking loads of damage before they go down, getting all kinds of incredible camera angles to boot. The animations are meaty and the hit stun caused by attacks amplifies every strike, and it never feels like you're stuck waiting unless your stamina got drained because you can easily swap from using powerful skills to basic melee attacks with little damage drop-off depending on your class, letting you balance the meter in an engaging way. I almost always recommend the assassin for the flashiest moves, the fastest attacks, and some of the best manual boss takedown potential in the game. The party helps out too, and since you can choose who comes along, you get a fair bit of customization among fellow adventuring goons. Sometimes they're the MVP, healing and buffing the party. Sometimes they've got the final perfect shot to take down an enemy.
How is the winter of our discontent?
And sometimes they're pretty useless. I mean, geez, Capcom, you'll design a 2D fighter AI to clean house in seconds, and my own allies can't even combo. Okay, that's not fair. I get that 3D AI in a game with as many variables as this would be supremely difficult to create, but it's the real shame of the system, like this ogre for example. These things suck to fight. Not as much when they kill themselves. I defy you to find me a game with multiple party members, with real-time action gameplay set in any D&D-like universe that allows you to swap between party members and customize them to your liking. I swear this game's the closest thing we ever got to that premise, and the lack of multiplayer co-op and reliance limits on the pawn system to shore up party members instead of, creating your own, really limits creativity in a game that could definitively be art if it made some changes. I think that's why Dragon's Dogma Online happened at all, because it's so obvious how much potential the game has. AI is cooperating by grappling enemies for free death blows. The amount of customization the system allows for, it hurts, dude. But let's not get caught up in what could have been. Dragon's Dogma is not forgotten, and there's a reason. Everything good about the game is found in moments. You might suffer through endless overland travel, arcane systems, tiny fonts, but you're only gonna remember the cool things with this game. I'm serious. The first time that griffin flew down from the sky knocked me over with the sheer wind power, and I grappled it for a daring aerial attack. Okay. Look at this scene and tell me it's not the coolest! The crowning moment for me, though, was the final Griffin Hunt chapter. You and your boys roll in looking for trouble, ready to fully extinctify, definitely not a word, a species, and it just drops in and starts flapping. Naturally, being a psychopath, I jump up on the thing and start hacking away. Suddenly it flies up and dips low, but if I drop, I'll die, so I open the terrible mid-combat item menu, chug the infinite stamina potion that'll last 45 seconds, and continue to slash like a madman, praying the potion doesn't run out before I'm over solid ground. Eventually, I tried jumping to get a better position, and grabbed the tail just in time. Dude, is this not Hercules? Is this not indistinguishable from Disney's Hercules? This moment was the product of a loosely implemented item system and a grapple. This game is amazing. And whether your game is good or bad, whatever that means, it's the details people fall in love with, right? Now, one thing that resonated with me is the devs' readiness to pay homage to the anime and manga Berserk, of all things. There's armor sets straight from the series, the evil mark on some monsters closely resembles the famous brand, direct homage characters, the application of fate as a universal law that binds the main actors. One of the cutscenes has you screw around behind the king's back, and it ends with your torture. I mean, it doesn't lead to any kind of horrible outcome, unfortunately, and it's not used at all. It's just tribute. Like, you get out of jail, run past the king, and nobody bats an eye. Missed opportunities. Apparently this was a promotional deal between the franchises and just didn't get mentioned much or at all in the West because Berserk apparently isn't big here. Apparently. Now let's fast forward to the end. So the dragons kidnapped my beloved, it turns out. I have no idea who that is. I've helped Mercedes, the hometown intended love interest, the princess, Maribel. Oh. The witch girl I helped twice. Okay, game, I threw my wife off a cliff, and I'm still grieving while rolling in damage increases. Very disrespectful. It's wild they even give you a choice here. I came to kill a lizard. Let's get it on. I can see being morbidly offended by whatever beloved the game decides is yours in a game without proper romance, though. You get the sense that nothing really matters given the fate conceit, and the dragon's simply opting to let the player choose whether he lives or dies. Nihilism is ugly, my dude. If you're gonna take that philosophical stance, at least be productive. It's a proper epic struggle. They make pretty decent use of space to create a very cinematic dragon slaying, but in the end, you're not doing anything different than any other fight in the game. But killing dragon bad, maybe, and now the world is covered in ash, and apparently turning into literal hell. Oh hey, game, thanks for the arranged marriage. Okay, back to the sea with you, you post-bimbification garden gnome. You craven harpy, yeah, that's right. So anyway, the great previous chosen one goes and the last chosen one, the king, gets really, really old. So instead of boring you with the context, here's the old imperialist himself trying to fight. Look at this man. What a rube. What a buffoon. Aw man, I hate being accused of high treason. Darn. The endgame consists of jumping into a very long hole, going through small sections for treasure, and fighting the same few bosses 100 times until you're disgustingly overleveled. Realistically, this stops being fun after a few runs, but you get so strong by the end, it feels somewhat worth it. And it's necessary because the secret end boss with the best equipment in the base game is a timed encounter and it's best to be optimized. Quick word on that though, when this game came out, tons of people posted optimized builds, min-maxed builds, and a few years ago, this guy uploaded a series of videos showing the potential of all kinds of builds. And he's just like, yeah, that unoptimized Strider build only kills like 20 seconds slower than the Assassin. Damn, all that effort for a marginal power boost. Young me was a fool. It speaks to a decent amount of inter-class balance, and I appreciate a game where min-maxing is possible, but totally unnecessary. Either way, let's say, hypothetically, you had a good time in the main game. Well, the included DLC in most copies available today is here to let you know. that you're
Can't
stupid.
do that much damage. Nobody can do that much.
Bitterblack Isle is a triumph. It's dark, it's perfectly on theme for a dark fantasy game. It's so hard. Unfortunately, hard doesn't mean much in this game. It's more about how high your stats are, and I wish they'd curtailed that and made it more about skill. But if you're here for a dungeon delving challenge, this thing will kick you so hard in the scrot or other genitalia, you'll be pissing organ goop for a week. Would you learn how to write a script? Take the innocuous treasure chest here. You might assume the bats are here to annoy you, but actually they're warning you of the hidden vorworm that will undoubtedly kill you before you can shake out. Epic! Exploring the isle is kinda gated behind Everfall progression because some of these enemies simply choose not to die, but by the time you've killed 100 bosses and put the final boss down, you definitely feel like the chosen one. What's awesome is there were ways to do all this with a party, with a different class setup, and your adventure could be wildly different than mine, maybe better or worse, but for all the missteps and wasted potential, this game has a lot to give. It's so easily at the top of the list of games that absolutely need a sequel. And with all the slowness and inconveniences and darkness, the game really emblemizes ancient Dungeons and Dragons in a modern game. In that way, it's as much a relic as it is a new avenue. Hey, it's KBash. Special thanks goes out to my $4 patrons, whose names are on the screen. The show's on its way somewhere good thanks to the community's generosity. And special thanks goes out to my extra generous patrons who are Azero, BZ Soul, Beverage Crisp, Boha, Brandon, Caesar T, Chief, Cody Golden, Corgi the Lad, Couch MOBA, Crack Stuntman, CW Glassworks, Dakota Storm Jones, Damaged YouTube Analytics, David Castillo, Den Het, Don't Worry About It, Dylan Coffee, Editorial Entertainment, Exa, Frankenstitch, Gucci Plant, Harkaj, Huey, Jason Lasky, Jaden, J-Deus, John Weber, Joke Frog, Justin Sherry, Kelvin, Creighton, Latrix, Laundry Mom, Lego Sid, Liam Duncan, Lucas Phoenix, Marcules, Marmato, Maximilian Wolfgang Niver, Milky Moo Official, Mr. Dodongo, Miles Burris, Ol Burgle, Only LK, Pink Peacock, Quillworth, Reggie Rodriguez, Ricochet Frame, Siren Smells Good, Salty Smasher, Sekai no Awarida, Seamus Nerd, Shod, Simp God, Special Children, Spooky Grimalkin, Sublime Cataclysm, Super Sandwich Guy, Tenken Zephyrborn, TFY Lex, Thrips Heartrop, Travis Edwards, V01156, Venom, Viewers Like You, Vic, Walter Taggart, Wapoza, Well Shit, Zachary V, Zanaso, Zane the Impure, Zane the Pure. If you'd like to help support the show and make it even better, check out my Patreon. We've got all kinds of goals and lots of rewards in store. Stay tuned for more. KBash out.